fun to find cars like this because different thinking, you know? In America, we sort of got used to engine in the front, transmission in the middle, rear end at the back. Every car was built basically the same, you know? Whereas in Europe, they experiment engine in the middle, engine in the front, engine in the back, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive. Well, another episode of Jay Leno's Garage, Pandemic Edition. We're doing today my favorite kind of car, original and unrestored. The car is a 1949 Citroën Traction Avant. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Just a breakthrough car, just an amazing automobile. I've always liked this. You know, we always rave about the SM and the DS, but this is really the car that paved the way for those legendary automobiles, and still the most popular model ever produced. Came out about 1933, 1934. André Citroën was an innovator, brilliant guy, but sadly, just a bad gambler. Loved to gamble and lost the company and died soon afterwards, and Michelin took over, and we'll get into that in a minute. I've looked for exactly the right one for a long time because the first generation of these had a four-cylinder engine of about 46 horsepower, and it could go 60, maybe even 65, pushing it, but then a little underpowered. Then they came out under Michelin's reign with a six-cylinder engine. Now, a lot of the real Citroën aficionados did not care for the six. It was not quite as nimble as the four, but 2.9 liter engine, a lot more torque, a lot more power. This is the one that appealed to me because I can drive this in LA traffic. I can go 70, 75 on the freeway, no problem. Steering is a bit heavier than that first generation model. But with a lot of cars like Panhard and a few others, that first generation was revolutionary, and then things just happened. This car, I am the third owner of it, and as I said, original paint. It's a bit scuffed up, but it's been, I first saw this car, God, 15, 18 years ago, parked in the back of a garage, and I didn't have a whole lot of interest in it. And then over the years, I read about Citroën, and I read, oh, this is one of the rare six-cylinder models. Well, rarer. They built 760,000 of these between 1934 and 1957. Only a small amount of which were the six-cylinder engine because it was more expensive, it was more powerful. I think in France at the time, anything over 2.5 or 2.7 liter was taxed quite heavily. So this would have been the boss's car, you know, would have been a bit more expensive. The car is fascinating because it popularized independent suspension, front-wheel drive, and of course monocoque body and design. Now, we use the word popularized because it didn't invent those things, but this was the first, quote, popular car or people's car to integrate all those features into one. Don't forget, back in 1930, independent suspension, monocoque, front-wheel drive, those were all pretty much breakthrough deals back in that day. I mean, it was unbelievable. The fact that Citroën, who was a huge admirer of Henry Ford's assembly line, he incorporated a lot of Henry Ford's assembly line techniques in building this car. So it's safe to say when it came out, when you compare this to a 32 Ford or 32 Chevy or any of those cars from the period, it's way more sophisticated. You've got a lot more room inside because you've got the flat floor because there's no transmission tunnel. You've got all kinds of room. It's lighter because of the monocoque design. Monocoque means it's basically no chassis. It's just a fascinating automobile, very nice to drive. Also had rack and pinion steering. It didn't invent that either, but it was one of the first cars to use all of those features. And when you realize a lot of those features didn't come in other automobiles until, well, Ford really didn't have their first front-wheel drive car till I guess the German Taunus in about 1963. I hope I'm correct there. You guys will let me know. You always let me know when I make a mistake, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. They did build these in other parts of the world. They built them in England and right-hand drive and a few other countries as well. Let's start with the engine. As with a lot of Citroën products, most of the innovation is not under the hood. It's in and around it. Monocoque, independent suspension, front wheel drive. It's basically the 4-cylinder engine with 2 more cylinders on it. Let's take a look. Open these here. As you can see, fairly traditional design. It is overhead valves, not a flathead. Distributor, that's new. Well, you know, this car was last driven in 1975, so it sat for quite a while. When I got it, it had an electric fuel pump on it, which I replaced. I went back to mechanical pump because I wanted to keep it all original. A lot of people just went to electric fuel pumps. I like this pump because before you start it, right here you have a lever, which is a pump. Probably can't hear that, but see, now I'm pumping fuel into the carburetor to prime it. Right here you've got an oil level gauge right there. This is your reservoir for your master cylinder for your brakes. 6-volt electrics. I like to use these Optima dry batteries, you know, the ones that don't use any water, because you get no corrosion. You can see corrosion from the previous 6-volt battery that was in there. All I've done to this car is clean it up. We've rebuilt the front suspension, rebuilt the wheel cylinders, rebuilt the master cylinder, but that's about it. Everything else is as it was. It's got 57,000 or 58,000 kilometers on it. This is your oil goes right here. Notice the air cleaner goes all the way around the car. Kind of an interesting thing there. Yeah, that's basically what's happening under the hood. Normally your engine would end around here with the 4-cylinder. So it's a little heavier steering than the 4-cylinder model. And back before there were, you know, super highways and things, the 4-cylinder was more than adequate on a 2-lane road or whatever. But with this nice big 2.9 liter motor, you can drive it almost every day as a modern car. And this was sort of, if you enjoy French gangster movies from the period, Jean-Paul Belmondo and all those kind of guys, Charles Aznavour, the singer, you know, they would always be standing next to one of these. This was, well, think, in France, they sold 760,000 of them. Okay, I mean, that's a huge amount, especially for a country the size of France, you know. And the United States, it's a huge amount. So it showed you how popular the car was. And it was also the car of choice for gangsters. When you watch any of those French gangster movies, they always have the guys are smoking those French cigarettes and they're driving. A very romantic kind of car. Really, really cool. The 6-cylinder was developed, I think, about 1935. What happened was Citroën was a big gambler. I think he was driven into bankruptcy. He died about 1933, I believe. And Michelin took over the company and developed this particular version of the car. Let's look at the other side too. I'll show you the intake side. I like how these snap and lock. Come on, let's go around the other side of the car. Here we are on the intake side. You know, this car has held up remarkably well. All I've done is really polish these with this, using just as much metal polish as I could come up with. And they've come back quite nicely. There's a small, tiny amount of pitting, but that just adds to patina. And as I said, this is the original paint. Let's open this side. Here's your air cleaner here, your intake. Carburetor's right here, twin horns. As you can see, this is a pretty small car. It just seems big when you're inside it because there's so much room, but there's a lot of engine packed in there. It's a 3-speed, of which there was a lot of criticism back in the day. They felt when they put the 6-cylinder in, they should make it a 4-speed because of how cramped everything was in here. They just couldn't get another gear in there, apparently. And the transmission is sort of mounted a bit higher because there was more room when the engine was only to here, and then they had to move that forward. So there's a lot of re-engineering that went into it. It made the car just a little bit heavier to steer. I don't find it bad, but I think the purists complain. But I like it because it's got real power, and when you put 3 or 4 people in it, it's not a problem at all. But everything is pretty much as it was. I have not restored any of this. I just wanted to keep it original, with the exception of obviously the battery and a rebuilt original fuel pump. That's pretty much it, I think. I mean, just nicely manufactured, the way the fan is driven there with the dynamo. Here we go. Come on, let's go around to the back. Okay, here we are at the back of the vehicle. This is the trunk. This was an option to move the tire out of the back and put it back here. You've got two locks here to open the trunk, lock it, pull both these handles up. This comes back, hits you right there, and then you're screwed. But as you can see, actually it's surprisingly heavy. Normally the spare tire would go up in there. That goes back a little bit. Not a huge trunk. Here is some French girl's dress left over from World War II. I don't know what this is. I don't know why this is back here. Expect to find nylons and chocolate and everything else back here as well. But you got a little tool kit and a few other things. I don't know what this little thing here does. Never quite sure what that was. Oh, it's got a light bulb in it, of course. All right. Yeah, but it goes back there a little ways. See, and the bumper folds down too, which is unusual, but it's quite a heavy trunk. I don't think Madame would find that to be helpful. Gas cap is right here, of course. I like the fishtail. That's not an American thing, but quite popular. What's really interesting is how much room there is in this car. I'm going to get in the back seat. I'll show you what I'm talking about. See, just some. Remember, this is not a big car, but look how much room there is inside. I mean, I have got the rear seat back all the way, and I still got plenty of leg room, and I have to lean forward to talk to the camera, but look, when I put my head all the way back, you've got all kinds of room. You've got pockets here to keep stuff, and I mean, it's really a big car inside. And it's really not much bigger than, you know, an American 32 Ford. But you've almost got limousine-like legroom back here. It's really, really fantastic. These suicide doors are great because they make egress, as they say, really easy. And typical French, really comfortable seats. You know, I was reading a lot of reviews back in the day, and the purists with the 6-cylinder, they thought the seats were overstuffed, so you're sitting too high, but you still got all kinds of room in here. And this one has all the options, or at least I think it does. You know, you got the fishnets up here to carry stuff. You've got your glove compartment. And the gear shift, just really easy to do. First gear, second gear, third gear. And of course, like American cars, reverse straight up, like it would be on a 3 on the tree. Notice it says here, do not push clutch when starting. We put that on there because the French do everything differently. I just love French engineering. This one, you do not engage the clutch when starting. You start it without the clutch because it's, I forget the technical reason, but the engine spins easier when the clutch is engaged and it's in neutral. But it's fine. Your handbrake is right here. The windshield is the coolest thing. This opens up all the way here. It's amazing how effective that is. And then you've got another one here that opens this vent under the hood. That unscrews. So you get it. You know, before air conditioning, they had all sorts of clever ways to bring air into the vehicle. And it really worked because on a 90-degree day when it's hot, that breeze, even though it's warm air, it's still cooler than having no air at all coming through. Speedometers here, you've got your gas gauge right there, battery ammeter, water temperature, oil pressure. And and the coolest part are the trafficators. I'll show you those on the road. Those are really neat. I love the banjo steering wheel. Nicely done here. I think this is Bakelite. I'm not sure. You know, Henry Ford loved Bakelite, and I think André Citroën took that from him. And you've got visors, and you got your windshield wiper up here. As I said, they made this car from 1934 to 1957. And even when they were building the DS, they built this alongside it. And you know the pneumatic suspension in the DS, you know how you can raise one wheel, all that. The later version, the last versions of these, they incorporated that suspension. But these were so popular. This was such a loved, well, this would be the 32 Ford of France. I mean, it's that same sort of love. They made hot rods out of them. They raced them. As I mentioned, gangsters loved them. Police used, I mean, everybody used these. They were just fantastic cars because it was like Jaguar in England. It was a lot of car for the money. You know, Jaguar had a 6, so did Aston Martin, but Jaguars was everything was half the price, you know. And the same thing using Henry Ford's technique. Oh, there's the horn. There you go, right there. Well, we should probably do this while we're driving. Ready to take a ride? Come on, let's do it. Okay, we've got it up on the lift. I forgot to mention this, since we'll put it up, show you what it's like underneath here. As you can see, there's no rust, hardly at all. I mean, there's surface rust, but that's it. As you see, we cleaned up the gas tank quite a bit, repainted it. It was actually all right. New muffler. Shocks are okay. Those are the old Houdays. See the shock, and you got your independent suspension and all. Okay, notice how smooth it is under here. With that nice flat floor. Obviously no drive shaft because, as I said, it's front wheel drive. But everything is nicely original. This car was well maintained, well taken care of. Proving, you know, you can keep a car your whole life if you just take care of it, you know. All these need a routine maintenance. Change your oil every 1,500 to 2,000 miles. Okay, see, we changed the oil. Last time we did it was 8/3/19. With new gaskets and painted that. We only replace parts as we need to. As you see, that whole new front end is all new. All new suspension pieces, all new lines. Hydraulic brakes, of course. Here we go. Yeah, let me turn it around and walk back the other way. Here's your see, the transmission's right in the front, which is obviously very unusual, but not for Citroën, because that's the way they do things. But pretty neat. Okay. Obviously, all new brake lines, as you can see. Safety, obviously, very important. And these drives here, the front-wheel drive pieces. Those are all new. New rubber bushings, but other than that, it's pretty much original. I mean, this is a 71-year-old car, and look how nice it is underneath. No rust. Just, as I said, little surface rust, but that's okay. I think this is the original exhaust system. The only thing we did, as I mentioned before, was the muffler, so pretty good. All right, I think it's time to go for a drive. For real. You know, this windshield is really fantastic. I mean, it's a very hot day today in Los Angeles, and it's actually quite cool. Plus, you got the other vent, which blows down on your feet. Very clever thinking. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before. This is the original interior and the original headliner. Headliner is a little stained, but I guess some water came through on one of the rain gutters or something. It probably was outside for a while. But for the most part, for an original 1949 car, it's in very nice shape. It's only got, as I said, 58,000 kilometers, which is what, 28,000 miles, something like that. So that's nothing. It just sat for a long time. The original owner was French. He bought it in France. He brought it here, drove it to 1975, parked it. Then the guy I know has a garage. He put it to the garage, stored it for him for, I don't know, almost, well, to the first time I saw it 15 years ago. And then I finally got it about 2 or 3 years ago. But I always wanted to wait for the 6-cylinder because it just has the torque and the power. You know, it's funny, when I first got this and I drove with the windshield open, I said, boy, I got a blown exhaust gasket. I'm just hearing, okay, you just hear more engine noises. There was nothing wrong with the car at all. It's just that with the windshield open, it just opens up a lot more engine noise. Not intrusive, not bad, just more than normal. But this is really an advanced automobile for the 30s. Even though this, as I said, a 1949 model. Don't forget you had, well, when this was introduced, the four-cylinder was one of the most popular cars in France. Then this came in under Michelin, and then World War II started. And of course, production pretty much ceased. So when they started up again after the war in '49, this is still basically a pre-war car, you know. Factories have been bombed, the machinery have been stolen, everything been devastated, you know. So amazing effort. And the thing that surprises me is how cool it runs. I mean, this thing, I thought for sure it'd be overheating and boiling over, but no, it goes right to, you know, center of the gauge, stays at about, what is that, well, 65, 70 degrees centigrade, which is exactly where it should be. And it's got pretty good pickup too. It probably could use one more speed. I was disappointed to learn that the 6-cylinders, I thought for sure they would have a 4-speed, but no. It just, and then the more I read up on it, there's a number of great books on these cars. And there was no room in the gearbox. That being said, it's reasonably long-legged, so, you know, 70 miles an hour on the freeway, not a problem. And French cars have always been about comfort. You know, they're not so obsessed with Nürburgring and all of that as some of the other manufacturers. Not to say that they're not powerful and that they can't be quick, but it's not the main thing of the company, you know. And I love this gear shift. I mean, it's really fun. And when you take people for a ride who haven't been in one of these, what are you doing? What is that? That's the gear shift. Why is it sticking out of the dashboard? You know, they're just so used to seeing it down here with a big hump in the floor. As you see with the flat floor, you know, when the Toronado came out in 1966, Americans were amazed. Look at that flat floor, front wheel drive. It's unbelievable. I mean, the French had it in the 30s. Also, I don't know if you notice how low this car is. Especially compared to other American cars from the period. And you know, once you're sitting in it like this, you look down that long hood and you see those two headlights and you feel like you're in some big Duesenberg or something with a long hood, but no, it's actually quite a small car. The French do a nice job with manual transmissions for some reason. You know, my Citroën SM, oh man, that's the best shifting car, at least stock shifting car I've ever had. It's really, how are you, buddy? You see, people like this car. And the trafficators are really cool. Here, let me show you. It seems so involved to build a trafficator. You know, you've got to cut a hole in the center post, you've got to wire it, you've got a hinge, you've got to have a thing that opens and, I mean, just supposed to just a blinking light like we had in America. But then again, taillights were not standard in America in the 30s. I mean, signal lights, you know, turn signals. The French had it in the 30s. But this 6-cylinder makes all the difference. I can't emphasize that enough. I don't know why some people were against it when it came out, because it's silky smooth, all kinds of torque. I mean, I've driven the 4-cylinder. I just thought, it's a little too buzzy for being in LA, you know, and going up hills with people in it. I'm going to be holding everybody up. Whereas with this 6, man, it just pulls very, very nicely. You get a lot of thumbs up. Every now and then I get stopped by lowrider guys. Hey, that car's so low, I like that. You know, did you lower it? No, that's the way they came. You know, and I explain what it is, and they seem fascinated by it. It's fun to find cars like this because different thinking, you know. In America, we sort of got used to engine in the front, transmission in the middle, rear end at the back. Every car was built basically the same, you know. Whereas in Europe, they experiment engine in the middle, engine in the front, engine in the back, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive. Plus in America, especially in the 30s, 40s, 50s, gas was cheap, especially on the world market, compared to the world market, rather. So consequently, there was no need to make particularly economical cars because gas was cheap, you know. Whereas the French and the Europeans, they learned to be a bit more thrifty and economical because gas was so hugely expensive. And you got these wind wings here, which are kind of cool. You can direct the air any way you want. See, when you get in a situation, step on the gas, and you pull away. To use a Rolls-Royce term, the power is adequate. The four-cylinder engine was, I think, 45 horsepower. This was somewhere between 76 and 80 horsepower. I think that's fair to say. And considering how light the car is, it moves along quite nicely. But as I said, it's all how the vehicle makes you feel. And this is just so nice to drive. It just does everything you ask it to do. You know, there's no fidgeting with the gear shift and forcing it into gear. Everything moves, click, click, you know, almost like a Swiss watch, like turning the thumbnail dial, you know. It just goes click, click, nicely into gear. Now, you'd think the wind would be blowing in my face, but it's not. It really comes in and goes over the top of the car, so I can feel a little bit of my hair, but it's not right in my, I'm not squinting looking through the windshield with this thing. When I take people for a ride, they go, "You're going 100?" I go, "That's right, I am going 100 kilometers, 62 miles an hour." I took this car for a long drive last Sunday, and I really enjoyed it. You know, I got plenty of cars that go fast, but this is just comfortable. You know, it's just a nice driving car, and the sheer mechanicalness of it is what I love. You know, there you go, there's a guy taking my picture. How you doing? You know, the steering. This predates power steering, power windows, so everything has a nice feel to it. You turn the crank, everything is nicely weighted, you know. When you put the window up, turn that handle. I mean, I think now you could still take a long journey in this car and be more than comfortable. And pretty much timeless design. I know the designer's name, I can't pronounce it. Last name, Malina, I'm not even going to attempt, I know I'm going to butcher it. Like I said, if you're like me, you read all these car books, and you read these European, Italian, French names, or German names, and you think you got it down, and then you say it, and people go, "What? I have no idea what you're talking about." French cars, Citroën especially, are built in Paris. You know, all the other kind of cars seem to be built in Modena, Detroit, Stuttgart, you know, industrial areas. Not romantic cities like Paris, you know. And I think that maybe has to do a little bit with the style of the automobile and the way it's built and the thinking. You know, there's a lot of light and intellectualism involved in these. I know I'm probably blabbering here, but I don't know. I just feel that there's something about the atmosphere of where a car is designed. You know, that's why a lot of designers come to California to get the youth vote and the sun and the appeal and, you know, to make the car seem romantic. Just like a Cadillac can only be American. Actually, Cadillac is a French name, I believe, but there goes that theory. Anyway, I just enjoyed driving this car. If you ever get the chance to drive a French car, you should try it because it's just so different. And I don't know why, again, the fact that it's right in the middle. There's England and Germany and Spain and Portugal, and they're all around it, and they all tend to think fairly traditionally in the design of automobiles. The French are the only ones that think completely different. I'm not sure why that is, but I'm glad it is. And I say, so vive la France. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little trip. Give you a chance to see what, sometimes it's not all about high speed and doing burnouts. Sometimes it's just about being comfortable and enjoying a car. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna go enjoy this car some more, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks again, thanks for watching.